Hello and welcome to another episode of Fan-Made Cards. This is the video series where I react to a few fan-made cards I found on the internet. And in episode 15 I went over a set of corporations made by Jenemai, and there are more corporations left to talk about, and also corporations that were updated that I talked about in that episode. So we will do a mix of talking about updated corps and new corps this episode, to see how Jenemai implemented balance changes and also what his new ideas were like. And we will start with the corporation updates. So first of all, here we have Astral White. I talked about this corporation in episode 15. This is an asteroid corporation that starts with asteroids on this corp and also gets an asteroid each production phase. And whenever they play event cards, they can spend these asteroids to get 4 MC back. When I talked about this originally, I thought you could spend more of them per event card that you play, so like steel or titanium, but actually you can always only spend 1 asteroid. I think this is an interesting concept, and the updated version of Astral White actually is completely different. So first of all, it also has a space tech. It also works with asteroids, but everything else is pretty much different. So it has updated starting capital, not 53, which is a really nice amount, but instead 40. It also starts with 12 asteroids on this card. And it says whenever you play a space or event tag, including this, so it doesn't need to be a space event, it can be a space or event card, remove 1 asteroid here to gain 1 heat and 1 standard resource or 1 basic resource, you usually call this standard resource, of your choice. And then 3 VP if there are no asteroids here at the end of the game. So you are even more inclined to spend all of these. 12 asteroids, I mean, it's 11 because this corp has a space tech. So you immediately spend 1 of these asteroids. So basically you need to play at least 11 event and or space tags. The interesting thing is, if you play a space event, do you get to spend 2 asteroids to get a heat and a standard resource? That's an interesting question. So basically what does this grant? Let's say you always take titanium, then this corp grants you 12 titanium and 12 heat, as well as 3 points over the course of a game. 12 titanium is 36. 3 points are 15, 36 plus 15, 51. And then also 12 heat, which is a heat bump. That seems to be quite nice. Not like the most insane bonus, but a rebate on events and space events is always nice, especially if you're playing base game. This is really good because a lot of events and space events in the base game are super nice and you want to play them. That's why Media Group and Optimal Aerobraking are so nice. And this corp seems to be really, really good for rushing, because just imagine playing space events like Demos Down or GIA with this, getting 2 titanium and 2 heat back, the heat being used to increase the temperature even faster, and then the titanium being used to finance more space events. And then you also get 3 points at the end of the game. So you're rushing like crazy, but you also get a payoff in VP at the end of the game, which is really, really nice if you manage to spend all of these asteroids. And in some situations, you can even take plans. So if you're playing Ice Asteroid, for example, pick up 4 plans, and then you get, if it works like this, that you get, when you play a space event, 2 asteroids off of this card. Then you get 4 plans by placing the 2 oceans and another 2 plans from here. That would be super, super nice. So I think this is a much more interesting version. Like, everything about this corp, about this updated version of Astral White is much more interesting than the last one. The points that you only get when you spend all of the asteroids, then the higher amount of asteroids, more focus on the asteroids, because the original version had just more starting capital. And then the fact that you get standard resources and heat, not just money back, that's very, very interesting. So I like this version much more. I think it would be a great corp for rushing. And yeah, great update on Astral White. Next up, we have Celadon. That was the corp that got bacteria resources whenever they added a resource to another card. And then they were able to spend bacteria as if they were plants. So 3 bacteria for 1 plant. I already said that this is a really nice ability, but maybe a bit too weak because you need 3 bacteria for 1 plant. And Jenemai just fixed that. You now need only 2 bacteria for 1 plant with Celon. And but you also start with 7 starting capital less. So why do I think this is a nice ability? I can repeat what I said in episode 15, which is the good thing about accumulating bacteria on here is that these bacteria cannot get destroyed. Plants can get destroyed, and in the base game, you run into a lot of asteroids that can destroy other people's plants. And therefore, you're always looking for cards that give you instant plants that allow you to convert your plants that you already have laying around to greeneries and score points like that. And with these bacteria, that is much easier because they can do just that. And in the meantime, they cannot get destroyed. And there are a few cards that can add copious amounts of resources on other cards, like Extreme Cold Fungus is a good example. Then some of the floater cards in Venus Next can also add like tons of floaters. And if you're playing with colonies and there's like Enceladus or Titan in play, you can also accumulate tons and tons of bacteria on here. I think with this update, Celadon is actually quite strong. Of course, if you have just a generic starting hand, where you don't know yet if you will have a lot of cards that add resources, then having less starting capital will hurt, but it's only 7 MC. And 43 is not great, but it's also not horrendous. So I think Celadon is actually quite a fun corp now. Next up, we have Ascoli. And this was one of my favorites last time, because this corp grants you discounts on all cards that you play whenever you reach one of these global requirements. So at the end of the game, you will have a -3 discount on all cards. And that's really nice because with a -3 discount, you want the game to go on longer because you can just play cards cheaper than your opponent. So you can rack up points like crazy. But you also need to achieve these discounts, rush a little bit to get to these global requirements as fast as possible. And this is just a really, really interesting trade-off. Like, do you develop a lot of plant and heat prod to get to these points, but then you have less time to reap the reward of your global discounts, or do you just wait and then passively benefit once these requirements are met? And the updated version, the only thing that changed was it lowered some of these thresholds, and I think this is just something that you can only really change or evaluate once you've played a few times with this corp, because this is an effect that we have never seen, and you just don't quite know whether the global requirements are set too high or too low before you've played with this like a few times. So I trust the judgment of Gemini here that Ascoli is in a better spot than before. So basically he changed the oxygen requirement from 6% to 5%, and then also the temperature requirement from -14 to -16 degrees. The ocean requirement was unchanged. And I still think this is a really interesting corp, a little bit stronger than before, but not massively changed. Next up, we have Infinity Circuit. This one, each time you spend +2 heat, energy or plants gain 1 steel. And it was, I was debating last time if this meant that when you, for example, converted 8 plants to a greenery, did this trigger 4 times or just 1 time? And Gemini confirmed that it would trigger just 1 time. That's why it says 2+ here. And the updated version changes this? No. It grants you, instead of steel, it grants you more of these resources, but in an interesting pattern. Also, the starting capital changed, and we, instead of getting instant resources, we get production. So now, instead of getting steel every time you spend some of these resources, you get other resources here. So plants grant you power, power grants you heat, and heat grants you plants. That's an interesting change. I think this makes this corp really, really strong at rushing. I think it was already good at rushing before, because even when rushing, you like to get just free steel. But in the mid to late game, steel could get kind of useless if you're rushing, because steel cards are often just production cards. A card like Mohole Area is really good, really good for a rush player, but obviously only if you play it in the early game. If you like draw Mohole Area in the mid game, you don't need it anymore as a rush player. It just doesn't make sense. You would much rather draw a space event that increases the temperature. But power, heat, and plants, all of these resources can be used to increase the global parameters, and therefore I think this is very interesting. Once again, this will mean that if you spend 2 plants or 4 plants or 6 plants, it doesn't matter. If you do it in one action, it will grant 2 power. So converting 8 plants to a greenery will not grant you 8 power, it will grant you only 2. I think I don't quite know how strong this is. I think I would definitely need to play test this. It would be pretty good for generalist probably, because you start with 3 out of 6 production types already. I think it would be good for rushing, but it could be a bit poor. But having 3 production that allow you to increase global parameters at the start of the game is already quite nice. I mean, the plant prod at the start of the game has a lot of value. And if you have a power-hungry card like Carbonate Processing or GHG Factories, the power prod combos really nicely with the heat prod. Or even if you have like Fuel Factory, it's also nice to start with a power prod. Fuel Factory is not the most amazing card, but if you get the power prod for free, you'd much rather spend it on a power-hungry card than having it laying around and being vulnerable to tapping. Jesus Christ. So I think this is a really interesting concept. Once again, I like it more than the original version, because it just is a little bit more interactive. It's more interesting. You get different types of resources, not only steel. Also, I think it's just a more focused corp on one thing, and that one thing is rushing. So I like it, I think. And the last corp that got changed, and you don't really see it at first glance, is Kaz Zudan. This was the corp that didn't get their energy converted to heat, but could use energy to place cities. And the new version looks very much similar, but it says, and that's very important, you may place unused energy onto this card instead of excess heat. Instead of as excess heat. So the first version of this corp required you to place unused energy onto this card, and then this could only be used to pay for cities. The new version allows you to do this, and this is much better, because what if you don't want to use your power to place cities? Cities are not always useful. Cities are only useful, like a bare city tile without any development or anything, is only useful if there's greeneries on the board. But if no one's placing greeneries, for example, one of the other players has played an oxygen bumper early on and just increased the oxygen that way, and no one else saw it necessary to increase their plant prod, because oxygen was getting maxed out quickly anyways. then cities on the board are really not worth much. And therefore, I think the original version was just really, really weak because it ripped you of the, didn't allow you to use your energy as heat, which can sometimes be really valuable to push the temperature track. It was really forcing you. It was really, really forcing you to play a long game, place a lot of cities, and it just meant that you needed to develop plant prod. But developing plant prod when the heat is not going up fast because you can't use your power as heat is also difficult because a lot of plant production cards, a lot of good plant production cards require the temperature to be higher. So heather, grass, bushes, trees, they require the temperature to be rising. And with Kaz Zudan, one option to increase the temperature, which is developing power prod, is just ripped from you. But with the new version, you can maybe start using your power as heat at the start of the game, get a few TR, increase the temperature, play some good plant production cards, and then later on, you use your power to play cities. This can actually be a really, really nice bonus in the late game or in the mid to late game. But I still think it's quite niche. It's not that common to have like tons and tons of power prod. And if you only have like 2 or 3 power prod, then this just takes too long to get a city down. And cities are, in my opinion, also not that valuable in many games. But definitely a good buff, and I would much rather play this version of Kaz Zudan than the first one. And that was all of the updated versions of the corps I discussed in episode 15. Now let's talk about some new corps. And the first is Bell Plantasia. And this, oh yeah, when I saw this, I thought, well, I really love this corps. This is really interesting. So it starts with 52 MC. That's a pretty high amount of starter capital right out the bat. And then its effect says, when you play a blue card, you may either pay 2 MC less or trigger its action immediately an additional time. So it should not say a blue card, so it should say a blue card with an action, because there are a lot of blue cards like this one. This has only an effect. A lot of blue cards only have effects. Something like Viral Enhancers only has an effect. And as I understand this, because down here it says trigger its action, effect cards don't get triggered immediately. But if you play something like, let's say, Electro Catapult, where you can use Electro Catapult once per gen to sell either a plant or steel to get 7 MC. When you play this with Bell Plantasia, you can either pay 2 MC less, so it doesn't cost 17, it just costs 15. Or, which would be much better here, you pay the full price and then you trigger in the same action the action of Electro Catapult once for free. So you once for free get to sell a steel or a plant for 7 MC. And then in the same gen, as usual, you can also use the action. So basically it triggers all of your action cards once for free if you want to when you play them. Some action cards that's worth it with, like most action cards, you would like that over 2 MC. You would only take the 2 MC if this allows you to play the action card 1 gen earlier. Let's say you only have 15 MC and a steel. No, that's a bad. Let's say you want to play. What's a good? You want to play Development Center, which costs 11. But you only have 9 MC. Obviously, you would then use the first effect here to play it for 9 MC, and then you are able to use the action. So I really like this. The thing is, it's kind of like Byron, where you need blue cards with actions and you need them early to actually make use of your ability. The thing is, Byron probably scales if you have, like, with Bell Plantasia, you want many average to good action cards, and with Viren, you want one game-breaking action card. Because you can only use your ability with Viren once per gen on one action card. And it doesn't matter if you have four good action cards or just one, you always will want to use it on the best one. Of course, it's great to have some flexibility. Maybe sometimes you want cards, sometimes you want points, sometimes you want MC, but you are completely fine with just one really good action card. With Plantasia, you want to play basically every action card you see in the draft you want to play, because you get an immediate bonus with them. So it's a little bit different to Viren, but it still holds true. You want to have a lot of blue action cards, and blue action cards can be hard to come by if your opponents know what they're doing. They will also want them, they will deny them from you. I don't know off the top of my head what the ratio in the deck is, how many of the cards are action cards, how common are they. But it's one thing I like about this corp is action cards are the most interesting thing about Terraforming Mars. They more often than not allow you to do the most interesting stuff, like selling resources to get other resources, drawing cards, accumulating resources. That's just very interesting, and Plantasia makes that stronger, and is also grants you choice whenever you play a blue action card. So I really like this corp. I think it's very creative. I would love to play with it. Next up, we have Britannia. And also it has a lot of starting capital, which makes it generically okay, at least. So Britannia, this has 40 MC, so not a lot of starting capital. This is really average. I always hated when playing with Jenemai that you only start with 40 MC, and this often hinders you from playing a few good terraforming cards in the first gen. You start with 40 MC in a titanium production. That definitely helps out your economy. Oh, okay. Wow, what a strong effect. Whenever you play a space tech, including this, draw a card. This is insane. This is Point Luna on crack. But to balance it out, it has basically the Polyphemus effect. When you buy a card to hand, pay 5 MC instead of 3, including the starting hand. And the thing with Polyphemus is, I think, a colonies expansion corporation that just has ridiculous starting capital and a good economy, and then a negative effect, basically this one, that you always pay 5 MC instead of 3. And with Polyphemus, that really doesn't work, because your starting capital and economy are great, but they are not completely out of this world insane. But the effect is really, really bad. You can only basically play Polyphemus when you know from your starting hand that you have insane card draw. Like you have AI Central Gen 1, or you have the ability to place 2 colonies on Luna or something. Not Luna, Pluto, and trade there every gen. It's you get a lot of cards for free anyways, and then you just buy the absolute best cards in the draft. Because paying 5 instead of 3 really, really hurts. You think it's not that bad, but it's really not great. With Britannia, you have free built-in card draw with this Point Luna on crack. Let me just check how many cards are there in the base game with space tax versus earth tax. So base game has 22 earth tax, and we already say Point Luna is insane, but it has 42 space tax. Jesus Christ, yeah. So this effect is really, really strong. Also, the expansions, I think, even increase the percentage of space tax and good space tax in the deck. So playing this with all expansions would be even better. So I think this could work. It really hurts. With Polyphemus, one good thing is that you have high starting capital and can afford to buy a few cards at the start of the game. With Britannia, it really hurts. With 40 MC, you can at most buy 8 cards. You cannot even buy the full starting 10. So yeah, it's an interesting corp. I think it needs play testing for me to fully like rate it. But I like the concept. I really like the concept. And then lastly for today, Fatherland. Starts with 41 MC, has a titanium prod, a Jovian and a power tag. And it says when you play an energy or Jovian tag, gain 1 titanium. What I like about this corp is that it gives some value to power tags. Power tags are like the power tag is notoriously the worst tag in the game. Like if you are, I made a whole video about ranking tags. If we are not talking about the card quality of cards with that tag, but the strength of the tag itself, the power tag is really bad because there's like no combo potential for it. There's only Power Grid and Thorgate, and both of those suck. So giving value to the power tag via Fatherland, granting you 1 titanium each time you play a power tag is really nice. Other than that, I don't think this is that interesting. The titanium, when playing Jovian tags, can help you play more more Jovians, because most Jovian tags, at least in the base game, are also space tags. And then there's like 1 card in the game, Beam from a Thorium Asteroid, that will grant you 2 titanium because it has a Jovian and a power tag. Yeah, I think this could be okay. You immediately start with 2 titanium, which is quite nice. Meaning that your starting capital is not 41 MC, but 47 if you have a use for the titanium. It would be interesting to do like merger Fatherland plus Saturn Systems, or merger Fatherland plus Thorgate, or think about it. Double down merger Fatherland, Saturn Systems, Thorgate. That would be funny. Not good. I didn't say good. Just said funny. Yeah, it's not like I definitely like the last 2 more. I think they were more interesting. Fatherland is basically just to me this feels like a base game corporation. It's simple. I think it can be good with some starting hands. It's not too busted. It's okay. I like it. But yeah, that was it for today's episode of Fan-Made Cards. I hope you enjoyed this episode as always. And if you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing. And I hope I see you in the next episode. Have a good one, guys, and goodbye.